Welcome, children of the night, back to the Infernal Archive. On this episode, we will be watching a film from 1988, a Dutch film called The Vanishing. I'm going to read the Wikipedia blurb for you very quickly here. The Vanishing, or in Dutch, Spoorloos, is a 1988 Dutch thriller film directed by George Sluizer, adapted from the novella The Golden Egg by Tim Crabbe. It stars Jean Bervoz as a man who searches obsessively for his girlfriend following her disappearance at a rest area. And quick little interesting tidbit about this film, I was reading a little bit about the production. So the director had, I think the novel came out in the early 80s, and the director had read this novella and he was like, oh, I gotta work with this guy. So he contacted the writer, this Crabbe guy. And he was like, hey, can I get the rights? They figured it out. And then the Crabbe guy was like, oh, this would be awesome. I'm gonna write I'll write the script. So he wrote a draft of the script, and then this other guy read it, and he was like,
this is terrible.
It's the way he phrased it, he was like, it's good, it's not great. Okay. Then they worked on a second draft together. Mm-hmm. Then they worked on a third draft together, and then apparently while they were writing the third draft, they had some big creative differences. And I think the fourth draft ended up only being written by the filmaker. Right. And this made the author really pissed off. And anyway, so there's a little bit of drama during the initial pre-production of the movie. Apparently, though, from what critics have said, is it's extremely faithful to the novella. So there's like a few little things, obviously, expanded for the motion picture, but whatever. But anyways, I don't really know anything about this movie. It's Dutch.
Hey, everybody! I'm from Holland. Isn't that weird?
Certainly hope that I have the subtitles. They also remade it, an English version in the 90s.
I saw that in 90s. It's starring Jeff Bridges.
Yes.
Yeah.
I heard that one's not very good, so I downloaded the original or whatever.
Yeah, well.
But yeah, we're
going to find out for you. Sorry, it's a little smoky in the crypt here today.
We're using a fog machine.
Yeah, fog machine.
We got to figure it out.
It's also known as a bong, Francois. You don't have to be.
Ah, man. That's some heavy shit, man.
No, I'm just kidding. Fog machine, a little aggressive.
Okay, we're gonna watch the movie and then we will come talk to you after we're finished.
I just can't take no pleasure in killing. Just some things you gotta do. Don't mean you have to like it.
Welcome back, children of the night. We just finished watching The Vanishing from 1988. Can't for the life of me remember what the director's name was. Guy who wrote the book. It was like Crabbe. His last name was like Crabbe or something.
Very European
names, yeah. You wouldn't know them anyways. Wow, what a great film. We were kind of discussing, and I think we think it's like top two of the films we've watched so far.
Like top five for sure.
Yeah.
I think the only one I would maybe put ahead of it would be Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Yeah, that one was pretty dynamite.
That was pretty unbeatable, I think.
I'll say, like, off the bat, this movie was not horror. This was not like Halloween horror. I don't even know if I'd classify it as horror. It's probably like
psychological thriller. Yeah, 1,000%.
It has horrific elements, certainly.
I would say unsettling and suspenseful and stressful more than terrifying or unpleasant in that way.
But it was like it was a dynamite movie. I think, like, right off the hop, what I'll say is I've seen very few films in my life that have been this original and this counter tropes.
Yeah, the whole thing, you and I were both like, where are they? Like, this is like, what? This is happening?
Yeah.
How's it going to end? And right up until the ending. And then even at the ending, we were both like, oh, that's brilliant. Like, that's perfect.
It's what it needed to be. Yeah. Because the beginning of the film, so the whole film, we kind of talked about we gave the Wikipedia blurb at the beginning, but it's about this European couple.
Someone being tortured in the other Norris.
Who are on a vacation. They're from the Netherlands, I think, and they're going to France for this little vacation. And then they stop at this rest stop, and the husband's, or like the boyfriend or whatever, he's kind of waiting by the vehicle. The girlfriend goes into a rest stop to go get some Cokes and whatever. And then a beer. And then she just doesn't come back. And he's like, what the fuck? And then that's the beginning of the film. And we've all seen films like that. We've seen abduction movies, kidnapping movies. And I'd say for the first maybe like 20 minutes, 15 minutes,
pretty standard.
It's like, okay, this is stressful. It's intriguing in that regard. But then what the movie does immediately that bucks any trend I've seen in any film is we do a flashback to the kidnapper's perspective, and we watch him come up with the idea and then prepare to kidnap this person. And right from that, it's like, oh, this is like nothing I've ever seen before. And the film consistently does that. It keeps coming up with, well, I mean, it was based on a novella, so I'll probably have to give the credit to the author of the novella. But that author came up with all these scenarios that were so wholly original. I don't know if it's as original in books as a whole, but in filmmaking, extremely original.
I can't think of anything that compares in terms of, you know, structure. And I think one of the things that this film does so well, more than just about any other movie I've ever seen, is the seamless. I'm not confused when we're flashing back and forth in time, and like we're seeing a flashback, and now we're 3 years ahead of the original. It's seamless and done in a way where I'm like, for a second, I'm like, wait, are we here? And then it's immediately confirmed, but not in a subtitle or anything. It's just very seamless, very immersive.
So, does this mean we're going back to the beginning? Oh, no, Pumbaa. No. We're going way back to before the beginning.
Yeah. And I think that is really worth bringing up, because there's other films that do time jumps, and it's frustrating sometimes where you're like, you're 10 minutes or 15 minutes into a time jump, and you didn't even realize there was a time jump, and then you're like, this doesn't make any fucking sense. Why does this person? Oh, it's because they did a time jump and they didn't declare it well enough for me to like register visually. Whereas this movie, it also, like you said, it doesn't declare these time jumps, but they'll put you in a scenario where you're like, oh, obviously this has to be before because he hasn't kidnapped her yet, so this has to be a flashback.
And they'll kind of confirm, and they'll confirm it with like a subtle note of exposition, some dialogue that's like confirms that thought right as you're like, wait, are we flat? It's like, this is a totally separate moment here. And
I never found it frustrating, which is really to the movie's credit, because there are much higher budget modern movies that attempt that kind of stuff and fail at it.
And movies where that's the whole thing is the time back and forth, and it's confusing and doesn't work. Yeah, right. Like that's the only thing they're going for is like some weird time distortion thing.
I think it's worth mentioning the casting. I thought the casting was like pretty great. Yeah. Our protagonist, I guess, this movie really has two lead characters because they share about equal amounts of screen time, I'd say. There's the kidnapper and then the guy whose girlfriend got kidnapped, and both of them were like really excellent at portraying their key character trait just off the hop. Like the guy whose girlfriend was kidnapped, he's very sincere, honest. He's almost innocent to a degree. And you just get that vibe from him in every scene he's in. You never feel like he's it's kind of interesting because off the hop of the movie, they're presenting him as sort of an obstinate fucker. But then really quickly you're like, oh no, he's very loyal, very dedicated. Yeah, like whatever. And then the kidnapper, he had a really difficult line to toe because the film does this other brilliant thing where it plays with so many conventions and almost with genre to a degree. Like there are certain scenes in this movie where like, oh, is this supposed to be like a comedy, kind of like a dark comedy maybe? Where and you learn later on that it's not. Some of the scenes are sort of played for laughs. But I think it's very intentional to try to play with your expectations so that you really are not. You don't know what's going to happen in the end.
You're questioning the whole time.
Yeah, is it going to be a farce? Which it doesn't end up being, but it very effectively plays with that. And the guy they cast as the kidnapper plays that, like playing off those genres so well. Like sometimes he's funny. The way he reacts to certain scenarios, you're like, oh, that's very real and very... and
he's just the right level of creepy where you're like, I could see this guy planning to kidnap somebody, but I also can see how you'd look at him and not immediately think that he's a weird, creepy fucker. He just the look of him plays that, toes that line, plays that off those expectations really well.
And so like I was just saying, so I thought the casting was really great. And then the genre, the bucking of genre trends, and like us not really being certain what kind of movie it was going to be, because it would go from, oh, this is a very stressful, just like straightforward, like I don't know what was that genre, like drama almost, like just drama, like straight drama. Then it would go to thrillery, when you were in the scenes when you could see him like stalking his
crime
prey.
Thriller almost, like on both sides of it, where it's like, is he going to find this his girlfriend. He's going to find the kidnapper.
Yeah.
Is this kidnapper going to, like, what's going to happen here? We're seeing his
almost
perspective.
Like 7 is obviously extremely Machiavellian and very like, that's a very exaggerated villain. But this film, there's scenes when the kidnapper is sending our main character letters and telling him to like go to places, being like, meet me at this cafe.
Over 3 years, over the course of 3 years.
And obviously he never goes in, well, at the very end he meets him, but over 3 years he never actually meets him, but he goes to like watch him. And it's like, oh, this is quite Machiavellian. Like, is there going to be some very crazy plan that this guy has or whatever? And you don't know. And then there's comedic scenes. I think there's 2 or 3 scenes in the movie that are straight for laughs.
I mean, the one in particular, this doesn't give anything away, but like he's starting to dip his toe, the kidnapper's tipping his toe in the water with this plan. And in one of the flashbacks, we see him accidentally chloroform himself.
Yeah.
Like he goes to sneeze and he sneezes into the rag that he's chloroformed. And then he's in the bathroom, like splashing water in his face, like laughing at himself for making this ridiculous mistake.
For fucking up,
Yeah.
And what's the Freudian slip he does? He's like, he's practicing English because it's like, whatever, it's the universal language. He's French and he's...
Eat shit. I got to eat shit. And then he's like, attach it.
Attach it, because he's got...
I must eat shit.
His whole plan is he's got this little shitty trailer that he wants to hook up to his car, and he's like, oh, that's a good, I'll talk to a woman and be like, can you help me hook this trailer up to my car? So that he's practicing his English, so that it's eat shit. And it's like, why is he saying eat shit?
Eat shit.
If I
Eat
wasn't
shit.
practicing,
Eat shit.
And then he's like, attach it. And then what does he say? He's like, oh, this is impossible.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And it's crazy how it's like, I think, like I said, it's 2 or 3 comedic scenes, but just those 2 or 3 are so good at bucking the convention of your traditional like horror thriller movie that it leaves you like, you're so internally, you're like, I have no idea where this is going.
And just pacing wise, they come at the right time where things are kind of getting tense, and then you have this weird comedic scene, and you're like, it kind of throws you off of like, how should I be feeling right now?
Yeah.
Like I was just getting invested in the tension that was happening, and now we're laughing, and then we're back to being like this weird tension scene.
Yeah.
And it does a really great job of kind of just throwing you off and giving you that twists and turns kind of feeling throughout the whole thing. Right up to the ending, you're like, is he gonna get the answers he wants to get?
Yeah.
It's like, what's gonna happen?
That's the thing. I think I said to you, I'm like, I can think of how this movie will end, because it can only end in like, there's a handful of ways that the movie's
Like
gonna end, right?
2 or 3 ways, basically.
Yeah, and then I'm like, and I can come up with a really good justification for each of the endings, and they would all probably be decently emotionally satisfying. And like, not a lot of movies can do that. Like, a lot of movies, you're like, it kind of has to end. Like,
especially by the time you're in the third
Lord
act.
Of the Rings, the Lord of the Rings kind of, the good guys got to win at the end, or else it's like, what the fuck were we even doing with these movies? So lots of movies have that type of thing where it's like, I need this to end in this way to have an emotional payoff, or at least it needs to
be satisfying at least.
Yeah, it needs to justify its ending in some way for me. Another thing I'd like to mention is, like, I don't know if this falls under subtext or this is just effective character creation. So our kidnapper, he says outwardly in the movie at one point, he says, I'm a sociopath. And it was super interesting the way they presented him, because he has a family and he hasn't done that many horrific acts. Like, he reveals to us that he's not like a serial kidnapper. He's like a thrill seeker. So when he was young, he like jumped off his balcony because they gave him a thrill, it gave him a rush. He likes challenging fate. What he says is like, am I predetermined to never jump off the balcony?
The only way to know is to jump
off the balcony. And so then at some point he's many years later, like 25 years later or something, he's with his family and they're having a picnic or something, and they see there's a little girl drowning or almost drowning in this river, this canal. So he jumps in, he saves the girl, and then
and then he said, I realized his daughter hero worships him.
Yeah.
And he's like, I realized that her adoration meant nothing unless I could prove whether I was truly good or truly evil. And if I'm capable of this evilness, then it's not worthy of this. If I could commit a truly evil act, then I'm not worthy of this adoration that I get from...
Yeah, once again, like challenging fate or predetermination. Like, he seems very...
challenging the norms,
Yeah.
bucking convention,
Yeah.
And just generally being an agent of chaos kind of seems to be his
And so
Yeah.
the way they would present his sociopathic tendencies in individual scenes, there's one that was like really effective, was like, I think it's hard sometimes to portray, especially with like a killer character or something that has a family, like how do you portray that they're always thinking about this other thing that's not their family without it being super almost contrived, where it's like they're sitting on a couch and they're like,
Whoa, you're really villaining out in here.
they're just
Staring
sitting there
at a
like
picture,
yeah,
yeah.
like something like that. It just feels so like it's too obvious. But the way they did it in this film is they would put him into scenarios where he would practice his kidnapping with his family without them knowing. So a great scene in the film is like he picks his daughter up from school and he's been practicing the move just by himself, how to chloroform a woman really quickly and like,
How to like
whatever.
lock the door, strangle, like
Yeah.
choke her out and chloroform
Yeah.
her while she's in the car beside him.
Yeah.
And then right after we see that scene, it's juxtaposed with him picking his daughter up.
Yeah.
And she gets in the car and he like gives her a half hug, shuts the door.
Yeah.
And then it's like the
Pretends
exact same
to-
moment. It's the same
Yeah.
movement, but it's a hug and lock the door.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Why'd you lock the door?" And
And he's like, oh, he comes with some reason.
explanation.
But
yeah.
even in his mundane family stuff, he is practicing this for this thing. And
That's
it was
all
like,
he can think about.
It was such a chilling, because the juxtaposition was so like, you are practicing for the most fucked up act with your daughter. And it was it was just so chilling. It was such an effective scene, and it showed his sociopathy. Where it's like, even in this scenario where you should be like thinking about, is your daughter, how's her day at school? He is only thinking about this kidnapping or whatever. It's the only thing that's bringing him excitement in his life. I'm trying to think. So like that. So that just goes to show the writing. The writing was extremely effective, and I don't know if I should
without spoiling the ending. I think the most brilliant thing is
right.
they reference this dream that the original kidnapping victim has
Yeah.
at the beginning, and the whole time you're like, obviously this is significant, but like, how does this tie into
Yeah.
the story? And then the ending is like, it literally comes full circle in such a perfect,
Yeah.
narratively satisfying way where you're like, oh, that's the whole thing, and it just ties a perfect little
Yeah.
bow on it, narratively and like literarily speaking.
I did. It's interesting because that aspect, when she first brings up the dream, I was like, oh, this is like European artistic,
Yeah, weird
like,
artsy bullshit.
Eye rolling,
Yeah.
like right. This is like like a writer being masturbatory with his own. He's being whatever. He's overstepping. Like this isn't servicing the story. This is just like whatever.
Just
weird symbology.
Weird symbology trying to present some meaning. It's
Yeah.
like, okay.
Like the
Yeah.
plastic bag in fucking American Beauty.
Sometimes there's so much beauty in the world. I feel like I can't take it.
It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's like that, like almost way too much. But it's like whatever. It's an inobtrusive scene, and you're like, it's over pretty quick. But like Andrew just said, because the ending somehow works in the dream in a way that feels not forced or contrived, or it was just like you said, it was this moment where you finish the film and you're like, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. There was such a, I think I said to you, like, the filmmaker knew the movie he wanted to make. There was such a strong vision going into this movie, and not just with the like, I know I want to tell a story about this. It was like he knew what shots he wanted to get. He knew what the casting needed to be. He knew like how the scenes had to be shot to like most effectively portray. He knew what the pacing was going to look like. He knew what the ending was going to look like. This was a movie that obviously was so
well thought out.
Yeah, in his head. He had the whole thing in his head, and you can really feel that when you finish this movie. Yeah, it pretty brilliant, I think.
I think the only thing we both agreed on that would be a point against this movie or could have made it better would be the score was like the one point against this movie. Like easily could have been changed and made a big difference.
Yeah, well, we were kind of saying that
positive.
it's like you can't hold it against the movie because obviously it came out in '88 and it's a European film, so not only is it like it's gonna be like '80s, but it's also gonna be like culturally whatever was popular.
And it's European, so we have to
exactly. So it's like it's tough. Like it's not. I don't think I would ever use it as a grade against the film. Like I would never.
No.
But like you said, if this movie got a modern score, some of the scenes would be so you could
Chilling,
increase
yeah.
the tension in so many of the scenes and just really emphasize some of the stuff. And it actually speaks to how excellent the film is. The fact that
For sure.
it has a score that, to us at least, is kind of detracting and kind of like takes away from it as overall. But it didn't affect how much we enjoyed the film. Like it was just as effective because of the structuring and the pacing and the overall just the scenario that they came up with. And I think we also said that maybe even if you strip the score out of it completely, that might even be
It could almost work just as
interesting.
a
because then it
silent-
would feel more real. Almost.
feel more like a slice of life, kind of like Henry portrait. Like that had a score obviously, but there were lots of moments of just straight up no score, just silence and real life vibes.
Yeah, I think if you're into true crime or if you're into home invasion type horror, like horror that needs to be grounded in reality, because I do know some people who like they are not scared by ghosts and that kind of stuff at all. I think this might be that person's. It's not horror. It's not my kind of horror movie. I don't even know if I would classify it as horror at all. But it might be a very niche genre of horror that is for those people that need to be able to put themselves in someone's shoes in a real scenario.
And definitely more disturbing and unsettling than any of the other movies we watched. Like thinking about the implications of the ending and like the fate of these people, haunting.
Yeah,
chilling.
there are I'm gonna say 3 genuinely horrific parts to the film. Yeah, I'd say the beginning. Obviously, we said there's a kidnapping, and you do get to see the kidnapping, that scene, and then we won't spoil the ending, but the ending or adjacent. Like I don't want to spoil too much, but yeah,
most of the third act basically.
There's horrific stuff in this film, so I it's why I don't want to like outwardly say it's absolutely not horror, because I think you could find a niche in horror for this.
And more in the thriller side of horror, I would say.
It does one of like I've brought up my tropes of horror, and I'm not going to give away which trope of horror, but it perfectly nails one of the things I think a horror film has to do to be considered effective horror and a true horror film. So like there are movies we watched in this same list that did not do that. So yeah, it's all some parts of it are more horrific than other actual like horror movies.
Yeah.
I think that's all I got to say about the film.
Whoa.
We will do our little wheel spin here. Remember
The
to screen
unholy
record.
wheel.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. My wheel is there. We will let Andrew, as always, do the honors. What will we be watching next time?
The film out here? Yeah, we do. Okay, let's spin it.
Oh, I don't think I deleted The Vanishing. Well, if we get The Vanishing again, we won't watch The Vanishing again.
Haunt. 2019's The Haunt.
We were watching.
Just Haunt.
Just
Sorry.
Haunt. Next episode, we are watching Haunt from 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in, Children of the Night, and we will catch you on the next episode of the Infernal Archive.